All right. Well, I think we're going to get started. We have folks will continue to arrive as they're able and if able, and that's totally cool. Those of us that are here are the ones that are meant to be here. And I just want to introduce myself first. I'm Michael. I'm the network manager for the Retreat Center collaboration. And it's my joy to be able to gather with folks like we are today to talk about practical and bigger than us things that affect retreat centers and to get to know people and to build community and to strengthen our collaboration because the work that we're doing is has always been and is and I think will be even more important in a future Turtle Island. I'm in Paris, Ontario, Canada, and I am thrilled to introduce Tatyana, who doesn't really need an introduction, but we're just so grateful, Tatyana, for all that you offer to RCC. And this is the last of our six-part series that we started in the fall. And so this is a huge thank you for the gift that you've offered to, the entire network. And these are all recorded and people are using them and using them with their teams. So I just want to
Thank
pour my
you.
heart out to you and a huge thanks. And Tatyana is a consultant and available to consult with you. So reach out to her. And she won't be a stranger. She's actually going to do a three-part series in the fall. So we'll be excited about that and promote that a little bit more. Someone
Super
else
excited.
want to
There's
jump
more
in?
Mount Madonna coming. Look at that.
Look
It's
at
like,
that.
hello, everybody.
So just
Uh,
I want to just ground us before we jump in. I need
yes.
it. So just maybe turn your mic off and we're just going to take a moment to find ourselves here, and Pam will keep an eye on the waiting room and let people come in if they are. So just find your center, find yourself, feet on the floor, body in the chair that's supporting you. Maybe open up your hands and feel the goodness and the energy that is around each one of us, and help us to push away any negativity that might be trying to creep in or any other thoughts. And let's just breathe into being fully present with one another for this hour. So let's take a few big, beautiful breaths in together. In this way, we let goodness prevail in our lives and in the work we do. And just come back to the circle and let your eyes fall on the eyes of one another who are here today and just give thanks to one another. So thankful for each of you being here. And now we'll turn it over. Oh, and the four-leggeds that are with us too. What a handsome, beautiful dog. And we'll turn it over to Tatyana to take us away.
Thank you so much, Michael. Lilia, lovely meeting you as you're off camera. The rest is Mount Madonna team. I'm super excited and delighted as you guys are all here. I'm like, I know these faces and humans, at least the majority of you. So if I get really, really excited, so be it. There you guys. So today we have, let me share a fabulous starter for our conversation. And because, let me see, how do I want this? So let me do the full screen. And Michael is going to watch the chat. But because they're not that, I mean, there's plenty of us, and those are in spirit. Hello, Alexander. Then I'm just going to make it interactive as we go through it. There's always a lot more to talk about, but I don't think I'm going to be breaking us into, actually, unless Mount Madonna folks do not feel comfortable talking about things in front of each other, which sometimes happens. But I think we're just
The
going to
only way to
roll.
get through conversations is to have them. So let's have them
Exactly.
together.
You got it. And so I was like, "Shabby, I might put you with Alexandra so they can talk about you and you're not in a room. Kidding. But I think we're just gonna do like as I would ask you and chat, contribute, ask questions. I love interactive, engaging conversations. This information is for all of us. I am in no way, I have experience and we all can learn from each other. So these are kind of some of the frameworks that I've used from literally stumbling upon by trial and error. I'm gonna put it that way. And it just kind of took what worked for me. You can take what works for you, what doesn't. That's I always say, try things, see what works, what doesn't. Make your own recipe. And then at the end, I always want to hear like, what are you taking, like at least one thing that you're taking away, because that's kind of will ground us and anchor you into like, oh, here's the thing that stuck with me. So that would be the test at the end. So get ready. All right. So the biggest thing exactly, as you said, Eldon, is the only way to get through difficult conversations is to have them. So we're just gonna start with that. I would love to hear, and you can unmute yourself. So, because I don't see it, what is a difficult conversation for you? Because actually, as preface that, I'm interviewing for a client and another retreat center, and I do interview, like I do recruitment. So, in my interviews, actually, what I ask, the question I always ask, and I suggest you do in interviewing people, is ask people how they navigate conflict and difficult conversations with a colleague or the superior that they report to. And people go, well, what do you mean exactly? Like, see what they call a difficult conversation or what they call conflict. And that to me is always an open-ended question. And it's the most fascinating one out of all of them, no matter what position I'm interviewing for. I always ask that question. So I'm asking all of you for the next couple of minutes, I would love to hear what is a difficult conversation to you? And work or life, because sometimes some things could be easy in one realm of our life and they could be harder in another. And we're actually going to talk about it, why that is the thing. So, anybody? Peter, great. I love it. And then Travis. Okay. Go, Peter.
Peter, we can't hear.
Peter, we can't hear you.
You hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yay. Okay. No earbuds. A difficult conversation for me is something that I would fear would threaten connection or groundedness in like my job's attached to my housing. So that
Yes.
having a difficult conversation with someone who has the authority to make changes about my job can be challenging.
Yep. Very fair. Which I actually at Esalen, what I did, I decoupled. So housing was under HR, but the job performance and things were not. So the manager didn't have any influence over the person's housing. And that was one of the things in that. I mean, yes, the job still came with the housing. So the person, is no longer doing the job, but it's this whole like, it was too much actually power to hold both in one role. So you bring up a really good point. Travis.
Yeah, for me, I think it's going to be any kind of conversation that has the potential to disappoint somebody or cause them to second guess their abilities for me. Yeah.
Mm, that's a lot of people.
I know, absolutely. So you can see why I'm here.
And just so you know, and Alexander, I see your hand. Thank you so much. I love this. I can actually see who raises the hand. It's on my screen. When you say disappoint, I want us to remember it's like the line, each extreme end of the line. When we have expectations, and therefore if the person has expectations, they will be disappointed. That
Mhm.
is continuum. So just so you know, you really don't have much control over other person's expectations and therefore disappointment. Just so you know.
Exactly.
That's it.
Yep.
Thanks,
Yep.
Travis.
Yep.
Alexander.
Yeah, I'll get a little more specific, which is that I have a really hard time giving critical feedback. I have a much easier time receiving feedback, like navigating critical feedback from others than I do actually offering critical feedback when someone isn't performing in a role that I'm responsible for overseeing.
Thank you. Kathleen, I see your hand as well. And Brenna, you're next. I love this. We can just talk about this the whole time. Um, the critical feedback that you're referring to, which I actually, yeah, you could also use constructive feedback. I was talking to another leader in another center, and the leader was literally, we were literally talking about that for another director. And the leader was softening in every possible angle and thing. And I was like, listen, this is not helpful to anybody involved. The person that you are delivering the feedback and actually all the, the organization, because it's a director, the organization, the team members that affects. And so I do want leaders to remember you can find your language that might be less direct, for example, than mine, but it really serves people to understand that and very specific. So I was also talking to another leader who's um, whose director has ADD. My 18-year-old has ADD. And so I live with that. I work with that. Like I notice it. But the leader does not have much experience to kind of like how do you deliver information for the person? And the leader was just going, I'm just going to do this general statements. I was like, no. You need to do specific things of a specific thing that happened and how you would want that specific thing to be different. That brain does not comprehend the vagueness to narrow it down to, oh, in this like following through, or like let's say like be timely. It's like in be timely, it means if the person is late for meetings or doesn't show up for meetings or does like their calendar, it's like there's so many specifics to that person that it would be really helpful that at least I've been told when they actually hear that. Then they go, oh, this is not okay. It's like, it's not okay with me that you don't show up on time to the meetings, like literally, or that you think 15 minutes behind the scheduled time is okay. Their brain is very different. So I was like, it was really fascinating to talk about that. All right, Kathleen and then Brenna.
One of the challenges I have is sharing what I believe is constructive criticism to another manager about their report, someone who doesn't report to me, but who is affecting my team by their shortcomings. And it gets to be kind of a competitive, well, what about, back and forth thing. It gets to be very personal, I think, when you want to say something about someone on a different team.
Yes, it could be personal. I think it goes to building overall. I'm just literally on the spot. To me, it would be around building overall organizational culture and the matter of how we all talk with each other and understand the impact on others. And when somebody is coming back, that's resistance, is being able to say, do you notice the resistance to what I'm sharing that impacts somebody else? And all I'm trying to deliver is for you to hear and start paying attention to a possibility that your staff member and their work is affecting somebody else. So it's naming some things, for me at least, that and like naming the resistance. And then just overall, and then also paying attention to yours if they come, because a lot of times people behave that way. They're like, oh, fine, I'm going to find somebody on your team and I'm going to give you feedback. And it's modeling that and being able to receive that. But then it's up to you how you actually deliver that feedback to your staff member, and be that bridge. Brenna and then Eldon. And then we can move forward. I love it.
Difficult conversations for me usually revolve around emotion. Like if I feel a certain way about a situation, it's hard for me to be more neutral in a conversation with someone. I also find that in conversations with higher ups or I guess adjacent as well, feeling the need to or the desire to have them like you, right? So whatever, not wanting to lose connection in that way. And I can notice sometimes that throwing me off my center, just with different emotional influences on the conversation.
Emotions definitely influence all of us, and some of us have a different capacity to hold our own and track them, and then and also hold other people. And for me, that comes with practice, just like anything else, but also naming, like I'll talk about it, naming about the intention of the conversation. And I think Travis, you also mentioned that, and actually Peter's like, you don't want to lose the connection. So it's like I just had actually a conversation with my sister 3 days ago, and that's how I started. I was like, the intention of my conversation is like I wanted closer, I wanted a relationship to be real and authentic, and there's something that's bothering me. So it's like I want to come in from the place of I want it solid, actually, what I was saying, because now right now it's like teetering and it doesn't feel good to me. So it was bumpy along the way. And it was fine at the end, but like, it's like what you're saying, like I was managing my emotions and watching it, and then actually her emotions, and kind of like, okay, well, she's able to hear something, she's not able to hear something, and that's okay, which I also will talk about. It's like I wasn't there to prove something or change something. I actually was literally what you're saying. I was sharing how some things landed for me earlier when we were in Malta. And I took time. Like I didn't, if I delivered that there, oh my God, that would have not have landed well at all. So that's kind of the piece. And Eldon, and then we can move.
For me, it gets difficult when like we have issues with somebody like saying like being on time or doing a task like we prescribe, going from collaborative problem solving to try to solve the issue to turns into nothing is changing. And so now it turns into discipline and then the whole attitude and energy around that changes.
Yeah.
And then having to get other departments in and things like that when it kind of that level raises. It's like we all hope that, if we finding issues, we can solve them together. And if people aren't meeting, you halfway or, yeah, that's when for me it gets difficult where I have to be, instead of being like a coworker and support, it becomes like, yeah, I have to become like a disciplinarian. And that for me is difficult.
I could see that. And it's to actually all of the parts that all of you said is as a leader, I find it's also our responsibility to communicate. Therefore, this space is for difficult conversations. And Alexandra, as you mentioned, communicate when things are not working. And we work with adults for the most part, I think everybody. So then it's on that person's, what I always remind leaders saying, that's also, if you don't put a person on notice saying things don't work and here's how I would like them differently, then you don't have, in a way, like a right to keep huffing and puffing and expect something different from the person. But once you've communicated something and the person continues to do the behavior that's not working, I personally was always like, we've talked about it. Now we've talked about it 2 times, and now it's having a very, like it's a disciplinary conversation, but you're just as responsible for it as I am bringing it forward. So by the time I've had the same conversation about the same topic for the second time, I'm kind of like, well, if you don't want to, that's what I always tell the leader. The person has a choice. All of us always have a choice, right? And it's like they have a choice to continue doing what they're doing, even if they're upset with you later, which a lot of people are, and then they're upset with HR. But I'm like, as long as it's not the first time, because I've never had, unless it's layoffs for like nature that we had, I've had managers come to me, be like, this person is not working out. We need to terminate them. And I was like, have you had any conversations? They're like, no. I'm like, no, you're not terminating that person. And it happens, and I'm like, no, because, but if you've had conversations, then I literally, I feel in my integrity, be like, you're an adult on the other receiving end, and you've done nothing to own your part. Then no, this doesn't work. And sure, they can find the victim piece, they can keep blaming, but you've got to find your piece within yourself to how many conversations are enough conversations. And we all might have a different range, which, if yours is really wide, I would suggest you narrow it a bit. But one and done is not a conversation to me, for example, and none and done is not a conversation, right? So there's some middle. It's like, look at that. We're almost done with all of our talks. Okay. So let's just jump in and I will look into what we've got. So we talked about it a bit. Like there's I've looked at it, the 3 levels of discomfort in communications: uncomfortable, challenging, difficult. And it also comes with an emotional piece, Brenna, that you were mentioning. Each person has our different levels. So we will approach pieces and conversations differently. We're going to talk about why we're averse to difficult conversations, mindset around them, how to have them. Like I have a little 5-step thing. And then the whole connection over constellation. And Peter, as you were mentioning, and somebody else, it's like, I'm very big on connection. And so that's the difficulty for me. It's like, am I going to lose that connection, or at what expense? Why to have them, overall? So a lot of us avoid them. They're uncomfortable and challenging, and we just don't like to be uncomfortable. We have different personality styles. We've grown up in different environments. We've seen and experienced what a norm is to us and what a norm might be to somebody else. That really until you start consciously learning communication skills and conflict resolution as an adult, we are all generally are shaped by how we grew up in our households and how our parents navigated conflict and modeled it for us, which for me is actually super avoidant, like both of them in different ways. And so that's like, and now like the more I see them, and now they're divorced after 23 years together, I'm like, how did you even get together? Like, it's just like all of that, the questions at the end. And then the biggest piece is the fear of losing or damaging relationships. It's the majority of that, us, and plus nonprofits, majority people work on relationships, and it matters to us, and the mission matters to us. So that's actually where a lot of that comes in for people. So I do believe that like difficult conversations do lead to beautiful destinations. They're not easy. They do help build depth and connection. And I always want you to remember there are at least 2 people involved. So you can do your part and you have no control over the other person's part. So that's the part. And I look at it now. So I had to retrain myself. I definitely was quite conflict avoidant in personal, not as much in professional, but in my personal relationships, much more, because there's a much bigger thing of losing the relationship for me than at work. It's definitely generative. I mean, I've now learned from experience. It's very generative. I just had one with my girlfriend today on the walk in London, and there was quite a conversation. I was like, I'm going to stay with it. Focusing on the resolution and repair rather than the rupture. So even the conversations, as you were mentioning, the feedback, the constructive feedback that you're giving, if we think about it as a repair or a resolution that we're trying to find for something that's not working, that might land even for your brain differently. And a lot of times, I'm personally motivated by having the conversations because the relationship matters to me. And I actually start the conversations that way. Just like with my sister, I've done it work-wise. I wouldn't be having the conversation. I mean, I guess if you're somebody's boss, I would tell the leader, but it would be very poorly done conversation when it's like, well, I have to talk to you. So here we go. But I hope it matters to you what kind of leader you are, right? And so how you're talking to your colleague, how you're talking to your boss, how you're talking to, to those people, particularly those who report to you, because you definitely have certain power. Jump in at any time if there's a question or something, because I'm just going to move through these in the next 10, 15 minutes. So then we kind of remembering in this whole, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's like that belonging and belongingness, that so the relationships, friends, and sense of connection is foundational for us. It's in the middle. If that's not met by whichever ways, there's esteem there, there's no self-actualization or there's no purpose. Like it's really hard to obviously build anything else. So no wonder we're all engaged and vested in it, because it's like it's right above safety needs. And a lot of times, just like Peter, you were mentioning, there's safety component absolutely involved, especially when it's a subordinate and a boss. There's your housing is attached to it. Its basic needs are involved. So those people, you got to remember, then those people will come from even the lower space of this pyramid, because the basic needs are in question for them. So you might start the conversation of like, if housing is not on the table or whatever, meaning like, don't worry about your housing. So like you gotta think of psychologically what can kind of close off some red flags so you can have a person open and to be able to focus on some things that you want to focus on. Connections versus cancellation. It's our current culture, at least in the United States, is very much of quick cancellation, particularly in social settings and stuff. It's like, I don't want to deal with a difficult conversation. I'm just going to ghost somebody kind of thing. Or I'm just going to not do it, which is a lot harder in a way at work because you got to work and be with that person. That doesn't mean it doesn't happen. So to me, the whole cancellation and ghosting also goes through the person doesn't respond to your email over and over and over until you send 3, 5, 10 emails. That's not okay with me. Like that is a totally conflict avoidant behavior. And so just kind of noticing where you might sit in your comfort level or where these behaviors might show up. But at the moment, we're a very polarized society. We have it though everywhere, like at a dinner table, it's totally possible. I was having dinner in my hometown, actually in Belarus, and my cousin, who I haven't seen forever, we're in Belarus, and he starts talking about Trump. And I was like, am I really having this conversation right now? And so it was really interesting. I was like, oh, this is at my own dinner table, and we're on opposite ends in certain opinions. And I chose not to have an argument. Neither did I need to prove anything, but it was really fiery. And so that's the polarized society. It's like, how do we navigate it and still preserve our own nervous systems? Why have the talk? So when something is difficult for us, something greater needs to outweigh it for us to have it. So whether it's your job to do it or you really, this conversation, it's like something really matters to you. And so it's like conflict is an invitation for the relationship to grow deeper. Some people might think that, some might not, but it's opportunity. That's literally what I look at. And it's an opportunity to understand where the other person stands. So if somebody is resistant to feedback, if somebody is, doesn't want to hear you, but at least you talked and you could see where the person is at. And then you can make decisions based on that response, reaction, conversation, as opposed to making stories and thinking through things in your own head, and kind of moving through it on your own. Any questions, comments so far? Moving through? Okay, cool. I like the Alexander shaking head. Okay. Difficult conversations are almost never about getting the facts right. They're about conflicting perceptions, interpretation, and values. So we think it's about like, however the conversation goes, it's the part of we have a story and the other person might have a story, it might have a reaction, things like that. So, and somewhere in the middle, we got to find a place to meet. So that's just something to be like, no, I know the facts. This is for real. And for the person, those are not the facts, for example. That's not their experience of something. That's a lot of times what happens with conversations. So how to have the talk. So these are kind of 5 things that I generally go by, and we'll come back to it. So I'll go through them. Set an intention. I think I said it at the beginning, is I tend to now set an intention in my mind for sure, right before the conversation. And in some conversations, I actually say it out loud. So it depends on your relationship with the person, depends on the conversation. I literally say it like, this is my intention. It's yours. You're not projecting on the person. But my intention is for us to have a conversation about your performance, or the feedback that I received about your performance, or how your performance might affect others. And I would like us to stay in a conversation. And for example, and if to the other person, and if you feel you're not being receptive, or if the person shuts down, or kind of like you're shutting down, let me know, we can pause. So whatever your intention is, like my intention is for us to have a conversation and to share what each party, like which each side experienced in whatever thing, for example, that happened. That's the intention. I wouldn't say my intention is for me to share something with you and for you to fix yourself, for example, to fix things and be done. And this is great. It's like, this is super triggering for another person. So always think about yourself. And actually, how I also talk about intentions is how do you want to feel through that conversation? How do you want to be in that conversation? Forget the other person, literally. Just forget the stories, how they generally behave, what might happen. But like, my intention is I want to show up for the conversation. I want to be present. I want to be open. I want to be curious. This I have to say this to myself because a lot of times I'm like, okay, I've got the facts because somebody gave me like the whole rundown, and like I'm just gonna go over those things. So, but when I pivot like this and I go, okay, I want to be open, I want to be curious, I want to slow down. Sometimes in Russian, I would write those things like on the computer or like a sticky in Russian because they can't read it, but it reminds me. So in the moment when it's difficult for me and I like speed up because I was like, I just want this conversation to be over, dear God. Like I literally put down, like, slow down. And then I literally pause and slow down, like very intentionally. And I come back to what was my intention? Curious. So whatever they're saying that's triggering me right now, I'm just going to be curious because I'm not coming up with a solution. That's one thing I'm going to talk about is come into conversation, not, I mean, if it's a termination, it's a termination. But if it's not, if you're having a productive, per se, constructive feedback conversation, it's coming to share. It's not the last conversation in a sense, like, so there's no, and by this end of this conversation, these things need to be fixed. When you're more open, conversation will flow easier because your state will be more open versus like, wait, you're not listening to what I'm saying. Like there's not this tag of war. Started the extremes. One of the facilitators I worked with, actually in hostage negotiations, used to say, put the fish on the table. So his approach was like at the beginning of any negotiated conversation, you put the fish on the table. So whatever that is, you go, we're going to talk about the incident that happened between Katie and John, or you and somebody else. And I want to discuss, the impact on you and on the other person, for example. So you start with that. What I notice with that, sometimes in our environments, particularly retreat centers and nonprofits, but retreat centers, people are a lot more sensitive. And this is not a qualitative, like, this is not right. So their system just shuts down because it's not, this is too much. So in knowing the people, sometimes I start kind of like a little more generic, a little more general, and that's what I'm saying extremes, is I talk about something that we are connected on and relating, that I can relate to them, just ask about something else. And then I ease into conversation because when coming in right from the front, it's like they're just like, ugh, and then they freeze or like just, a lot of times it's like if you say, for example, with determination, if you say that from the very beginning and you want to have a conversation or something else that there's like facts that they need to know, like I knew that from HR, they are not gonna hear it. Like, so it's a dance between saying, delivering it, and maybe pausing and seeing where the person is at. So to continue the conversation, speak only for yourself. Speak for yourself and your own experience. And yes, if you're delivering feedback of others, you can find a way how you relate to that feedback, hopefully. And so you can kind of put that together, but also like I am relating feedback of other people that I am doing it. So this is where it's really important is how you felt, how it landed for you, what's your experience. Creating clear boundaries of the conversation, of the time, of the follow-up. Like I can't tell you how many times people, because it's a difficult conversation, they just want it to get done and quickly, and they just kind of drop the bomb per se, and then there's no follow-up and there's no timing, if you state, for example, we're going to have a conversation about certain feedback I received. We're going to have this conversation today. We can also have a follow-up conversation, in a couple of days or in a week. It's up to you, right? And and then you start having this conversation and they get into, which it happens a lot, they're just going to go left field somewhere else. Left field for me is here, somewhere else. You've got to bring back the conversation. That's for you to bring it back. Or like somebody was mentioning, Kathleen, I think you were saying, like if somebody is giving feedback of another team member, or you need to give them the team member, and they start getting defensive, be like, well, so person, this is when you go, we're going to bring back this conversation, or whatever words you want to use. We're not going to discuss that part. It's not tit for tat. Like we're going to discuss this at this very moment. If you would like to discuss the response or some other examples that you would like to say that are not related to what I am saying right now, we can schedule the next meeting. But I would like you all to pick a time and a day approximately, because what that does, that anchors people's nervous system, including yours, that a thing will happen. It's not a vague, at some point, sometime in the future. It's like, no, we can have a follow-up conversation in 2 days in the afternoon. We can look at our calendar at the end of the conversation. So the person knows that actually another conversation can happen and they might actually drop the subject. But it's this part that you're navigating people, time management and space, and kind of like the anxieties and reactions. And don't delay the conversation. The longer you wait. So there is a continuum. There are some conversations, like I mentioned, the one with my sister. If I had it right then and there, I would probably just like burned everybody right at that moment, because I really felt like it. I was like, because literally I was like, I had to remove myself from a situation because I thought if I open my mouth right now, it was my brother, my dad, and my sister, and we never traveled like that as adults before, ever. So I was like, if I open my mouth right now, they will all be scorched. That does not serve the purpose that I want. So I'm just gonna take a break, go to the bathroom, and I'm gonna think of not saying anything at the moment and talk to her later. So there's that part. But I knew I was going to talk to her. I didn't tell her, but like in my mind, I was like, okay, I'm going to give it this time and then I'm going to think about it and then I'm going to come back to the conversation. So there's that continuum. But then there's another one where people just delay the conversation forever, particularly at work, and it just snowballs. I can tell you that much. It's never a win situation if you delay it, I'm going to say, for more than a week or two, because it's also not relevant. Like people forget the exact details and then they start getting, kind of like, no, 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 but this is what happened. And our memory is all over the place and all kinds of things. Is that it's finding a cadence that works for you, but you've got to have a cadence. It's not this random every once in a while, maybe, maybe not. If you feel uncomfortable with something already, you need to talk about it because it will pop up somewhere else. If you don't address and you're like, oh, it's small. Like I actually thought about that with my sister. I was like, maybe it's not that big of a deal. And I'm like, oh my God, it's gonna totally squeeze its way somewhere else later. And everybody will be like, where did that come from? And I'm like, well, let me tell you. And so that's kind of the parts that I want you to pay attention to. Any thoughts? Any couple of minutes for that?
So just to get clarity on it, it's like speak only for
Yeah.
yourself unless you deliver that you're providing feedback from others at the beginning.
Right, but you can also say like I am providing the feedback from others.
Okay.
And I'm finding, like, for example, I'm finding that you might have similar experience. For example, that would be helpful because if your feedback is so like you're totally on a different level with this person, and you're like, it would feel like it because you're like, I don't understand why they're coming up with this feedback, but I'm providing it to you. So watch your body language and tone. But yes, in that case, it would be, and if the person starts becoming defensive, it's more like, I need you to hear it, and I need
Mhm.
you to reflect to me what you heard from this. So this is more like the speak for only for yourself is those I statements. Yes, as opposed to Susie said, or like, like, yes, somebody provided the feedback, but I heard blah, 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 like that whole like circle thing. And it's like, find out what you want to talk about and speak from the I statements for sure. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Anybody else? Nope. All right. They're not like good wine. They do not age well with time at all, by the way. Managing anxiety. All of us have different relationship again with difficult conversations. This came actually more like from like I was like, how did I progress in my having difficult conversations? And the listening, the slowing down, the taking a breath and pausing, writing yourself notes about it, taking time out. I've had difficult conversations where I've called a timeout for me because I could realize like my blood was boiling in a sense. And I thought, this is not going to be productive. It's not. And the person is really charged and I'm getting charged. So at this moment, I'm going to say, we're going to take a break. I suggest, unless it's my team member, whatever, but like I suggest we take a break for 5 minutes and whatever somebody needs to do, drink water, walk. Like I needed to move, for example, a lot of times. Like I just need to get up, move, and change the kind of like, Brandon, to your point, I am a more somatic person. Like I need to move my body for like certain emotions to move through me. And so I was like, I'm gonna take a 5 minute break. And I come out somewhere and I'm like, I can like, shake things off. I can jump around. I can feel my feet on the ground. I'm away from the person and the situation. And then I come back and I go, okay, so where were we? How do I want to progress? And 100% of the time, actually, I can come back to this, what you're hearing now. And that's not where I was 5 minutes ago in that conversation. And all of that is absolutely okay. You're your own person. So whatever you need to manage, hopefully you learn by now and keep practicing. What do you need to manage your nervous system so you can be a good listener, but also a good leader who delivers their experience or whatever you wanted to deliver. And again, if it's not getting like if that's not been received and it's getting a lot of things, also don't get attached. Remember, you can come back to this conversation. Like it's okay if the person is overwhelmed or reacting a certain way, as long as everybody's safe, to be like, okay, well then we're gonna make a pause. I've done that as well. We're gonna take a pause and we're gonna come back to this conversation in a week. But we will come back to this conversation, for example. And so it's like there's no non-negotiable is no, we're not going to come back to the conversation. It's always negotiable with me of how and when, but I'm managing the time. So it's not a runaway train. So that's kind of and notice like another thing what I wanted to say here, a lot of times what I notice with leaders is they put a difficult conversation in the middle of other meetings and things because the schedule is really full and busy. And then they're like, oh, I gotta go because I have the next meeting, or the other meeting ran late because people are lovely with their boundaries and time. And then you're coming into this meeting, you're not prepared. So when you're literally having a difficult conversation, I need you to block time around it. I need you as a leader, take a walk, whatever, go outside, take 10 breaths, set an intention, come into the space and be fully available and present. Because when you run from one meeting and you run to the other one, trust me, you won't be. Like you won't be present. It's just that's going to be in the back of your mind. So again, it's the difficulty of the conversation and but it's definitely when you're talking about very serious performance and definitely when you're terminating a person, please block the time on each end and just be with the person. The 5, 10, 20 minutes that you will spend managing the other person's emotions, outburst, reaction of how they feel because they're being terminated will go a long way. I'm going to say this from a legal and legal perspective. If you could hold that energy for this 10, 15, whatever minutes, you can avoid a lot of lawsuits just from that, just from being present with a human being. That's it. That's just black and white. And creating a safe space, that openness, curiosity, no blaming, shaming, courage is what it takes to stand up and speak, but it's also what it takes to sit down and listen. That's a lot of times is the hardest. But also, some leaders take it to its extremes. It's like you can also take it to the extreme. You always sit down and listen, right? Like Alexandra, you actually mentioned like you receive feedback well, but it's harder for you to give feedback. But it's like I know leaders and then I coach them because they're totally open to feedback all the time, and I'm like enough. Like there's time and a place, and you also have to be like, yeah, you could be receiving it, but the person also needs to show up when you have things for them to do. And it's like, no deflecting, enough, and so that's the part. It's a dance. It's absolutely a dance of humans. Should we expect a resolution to come out of a difficult conversation? If we're attached to it, depends, of course, on the conversation, but I would ask you to be less attached to it than more, if it's all possible. It's a conversation. Start with that and see where it goes, actually. But if you have some clear things that you need the person to be doing because it's affecting others, it's affecting the organization, it's affecting them, department, you need to state that, like no matter what. They don't always read to resolutions, but they can be productive. And it's all practice. It's practice, practice, and practice. So remember the connection versus cancellation, the opportunities for growth. The choice is always yours how to show up in these conversations. And it's also the choice of the other person, how they're going to show up. It's not your responsibility, but it is your responsibility as a leader. So one thing I want to say as a leader, I have always said to leaders, it is your responsibility to initiate these conversations, especially with your subordinates, because there's a power dynamic. And so when anybody ever comes to me and they're like, well, so-and-so, blah, blah, they can, literally like, well, if they have a problem with me, they know they have a problem with them, but but they can come and talk to me. I always have told those, if the person reports to them, is like, no, it's on you to go and say, I'm sensing, I'm feeling there's something happening that I don't know, but I'm feeling that there's something that I am, that is affecting our relationship or that's affecting our communication. I would like to talk about it. It's not easy, but that's a part of your job, actually. So, me, I'm like, nah, that's your job. So, and there's Ling. All right. As usual, look at that. I actually made it. We have like 8 minutes to go before Michael needs to probably announce something. So, what I would love to hear is one thing that kind of popped into your mind through all of today, or all of this hour today, that was a reminder for you, or you went that was something new that you wanna practice, carry, think about, and come. Anybody? Ling, Michael. All right, everybody. Yes, Ling, go.
I have sort of a question, and I might have jumped in as you were addressing this, but my question is about slippery fish. And so that's like this was really helpful information for things I'm navigating right now in terms of what to do when you get in the conversation. But the slippery fish that shows up as not showing up for meetings, stonewalling, not replying. Oh, I forgot. You actually like can't even get in the room with them. Like at what point, and I'm also coming at this as a consultant versus having direct reports. Like at what point does it just become a performance issue that then gets escalated if you like actually can't get in the room with someone to have the difficult conversation?
Yes. So it's a yes to all of your things, because as you named all of these things, I'm like, you've tried all options. which I always do as well first. I was like, I will talk to the person, I will reach out. But I'm also a big proponent of like when a person have done again, like I think I was talking to Eldon about like how many times do you need to talk to the person? My rule of thumb for some reason is like three. If I've tried three different ways and like I'm not getting anywhere, I always escalate. I'm like, I do not deal with that kind of BS. Seriously. I'm like, somebody always has a boss when you work in an organization. It's harder for consultants, it is harder for us. But I think because I come from HR world, I just go straight to their boss. Like I just go straight to the director. And if their director actually doesn't do anything, I go above or just have a bigger conversation to be like, what am I doing here, people? Like, I don't understand then. If I can't get people to show up for us to do the work, we can't do the work. It's a waste of your time. I start with that. And actually, it's a waste of my time. Don't want to do it. And so that's my thing is like three. And if
Okay.
three things happen the same way or three different things, I was like, enough. So that's kind of what
I'm at about 10. No, I'm just joking.
yeah, that's what
I'll
I'm
cede
like.
the floor to the others.
Exactly. It's like it's a
So
way
three. Got
overdue.
it.
Way overdue. Okay, Michael. I have Michael, Travis, Brenna, and Eldon. Travis, your team is always raising their hands. That's interesting. Just saying.
Hmm. Well, thanks for the question. Delaying having difficult conversation is such an obvious one, and yet I've been on both ends of that where I have delayed because I've all of the things we talked about, or have been on the end of someone needed to have one with me, but they delayed for various reasons. And every time those have ended in such like a negative way. And so when I started this new role with RCC, right off the top, Peter and I and Pam have like been pretty open with each other about feedback we need to give. And it's such a healthy way of being together. And it's so refreshing to know that as a team we can lay it on when we need to, and it's to make ourselves more productive and to be a better RCC team. So yeah, I just want to say that's my new
No,
lived
it's
reality.
beautiful. And you guys keep testing it. Like, so your trust keeps increasing because you all are doing it together. And that was the agreement from the beginning. So that's another piece. You could set agreements with your colleagues, with anybody. So, all right. Travis, Brandon, Eldon, you guys can do this in 3 minutes. Come on.
Yeah, I think my big aha moment was just literally making space before the conversation to ground. Like I find myself preparing for the meeting all the way up to the meeting, and I'm setting expectations that I'm not meaning to set expectations on. I'm writing stories how the other person is going to show up. So I'm like building up this like battle sometimes.
Yep.
So it's like to literally set away like 10 to 15 minutes just to ground and set those like how I want to show up is going to be really beneficial. So thanks.
I'm going to ask your team later how that's working, but okay.
But yep, perfect.
That's why I love the whole mom with daughter showed up. I'm like, oh my God, I'm totally driving there. They're like, so everybody, can we talk about Travis?
Travis.
Please? All right, Brenna.
My biggest personal takeaway or understanding from all of this is just my own growth in nervous system capacity, I think, being able to enter conversations from a more stable place and feeling less like I'm going to get rocked by whatever goes down. So that came up a few times and that feels like my biggest driving piece for sure.
And your wellness, it's like you're managing a wellness center. They're regulating other people's nervous systems, but generally those humans do not have very regulated nervous systems. So good luck.
Thank you. I'll take
That's
the good luck.
that. Of course. Okay, Alden, and then I'll pass it on to Michael. This is so fun. We can do this forever.
I thought it was a good reminder about how to schedule a difficult conversation in your day. That for
Mhm.
me was really poignant because if I have one coming up, I'm not focused on where I'm at. I'm focused on this thing coming later. And so I'm not getting anything done and I'm not actually preparing. I'm just stewing and spinning. And then also having time afterwards, because sometimes you're like, wow, that really sucked. I need a minute, and
Yes.
instead of going like, now I have to go do this with all these other people and try to be present, like, hey, and like, no, I'm not there like that. And so that I really enjoyed that. So thanks.
No, that's great. Terrific. Thank you all very, very much. I'm sure I want to know all of you guys. what you're taking, email me. I'm always curious actually what lands for people. And, as you know, it's like writing it down or writing in chat right now while Michael is still talking, is that you cognitively will anchor it differently, if you do that. And so by all means, it doesn't matter, just send it or write it somewhere. And then thank you all for showing up. And thank you for this wonderful 6 months endeavor. And I'm hoping to continue. I think we're having an onboarding and like whole recruitment series in the fall that I'm really looking forward to, which would be very actually bringing things to those real workshops, and then we can workshop things together. So you're onboarding, that's working, that's not working, we can, edit, change, kind of try different things. So that's actually like a very hands-on thing. I love Sarah Lynn also brought like her team in her office. So back to Michael. Thank you all.
Amazing. Tatyana, again, a huge thanks for the last 6 months and this series. And while I was on this call, I was thinking, okay, the next step with this series is to like put the calls in the order we think people should use them with their team as almost like a training opportunity to generate these conversations. So I want to loop back to that with you and see what we can do to kind of keep going with this. But and to all of you, thank you so much for showing up today and taking this time. I hope it was a generative and healthy and good conversation towards healthy and good generative teams. And that's what we want for all of the collaborative and the folks that are in RCC. Our next call is coming up Wednesday, April 22nd. Next week, we have Laura coming in for a community roundtable from Mount Madonna, and she's going to be talking about the story of identity, rebranding, and rebuilding Mount Madonna from a marketing perspective. And so we have 2 marketing workshops coming up this spring, which are going to be really exciting. And so I hope to see you there. And if you hadn't had a chance to chat about membership, I'd love to chat with you about that anytime. And I hope you have an amazing rest of your day, whatever you have going on, whether it's still morning or evening or afternoon. I hope it's amazing. Take care, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you
Tatyana.
all.
Thanks, Michael.
Bye. Thank you all.
Thank you.